What's going on, everybody? You're watching the Daily AI Show. Welcome. It's September 25th. And today we are talking about how AI can give your career a personal career boost, how AI can be your personal career coach. And we were talking right before we went live about what we might talk about today. And I realized that a little while ago. I taught a class on how you can use ChatGPT at that time, not the playground. I might shift it differently now that I have a little bit more experience on the back end. But you can get advice. You can prep for interviews. What we were talking about was creating your own personal job search assets. In Salesforce, there are literally 15 things that admins are there's like a 15 item list of admin skills that it's good to have. So it's possible to actually go out and literally prepare those sort of core things and how they relate to your work, and then be able to just pull those in based on what somebody's asking for in a job listing. And so that's part of what we were doing. That would be like a nightmare to do without AI being able to rewrite it each time, right? Yeah. Who else has got some? I know Carl wanted to talk about this, and Andy had an idea. Oh, and Aaron just raised his hand. All right.
So thank you. It's good to be back. For those of you who didn't know, I've been out with a back injury, so feeling much better now. Thanks. One of the things I've sort of done a little bit of is looked at, can you use ChatGPT, for example, to help you write covering letters when you're applying for jobs, for example. So, quite often you go to like in Australia, the big job site is seek.com.au, SEEK, and you'll have a listing down. They'll have all this, mostly it's a letter, verbiage, but you chuck it into ChatGPT and say, translate this into plain English for me, and then help me write a covering letter for my application and things like that. And so I've seen that used. So that's probably from a career perspective. I think that's where one potentially good use for you, particularly if you're not great at the writing process. GPT can do a good job if you give it the right information. So
I will say on top of that, I have heard from recruiters that you might not see if you are just writing it for yourself, but you should really focus on your voice paragraph if it's going to generate a cover letter for you, because from the recruiter standpoint, a lot of those look similar. It's just the way that you can go on LinkedIn and go, oh yeah, no, you used this. So you can see it in aggregate, but you can't see it individually.
Okay, so Beth's point about voice paragraph is an important one. You don't want to have a cookie cutter ChatGPT generated cover letter that's terribly obvious to the person who's looking at those. And voice paragraph is a model of your style in the language that ChatGPT or other LLMs understand, that you add as a system prompt to any generation that you request. So that voice paragraph is something that is, you probably never even heard that term before. But that's a very important step in getting personalization of ChatGPT output when you're asking it to rewrite something for you, that it comes across with the right tone and the tone that you want, that you actually use based on its analysis of your writing. So thank you, Beth, for reminding us about voice paragraph. It's a very important term of art in this. I want to just say a few things about career planning and using tools for AI. The first and most obvious one to me is, if you're not learning about AI and how to use these tools, you're not supporting your career at this point, because every career, with few exceptions, maybe, I can't think of an exception, but it should be using AI. And if you want to be in the position to advance in the future in your career, you need to start learning about AI tools right now. Now, I'm at the tail end of my career, so I'm not really looking for a career. I've had one, but I want to just talk about what you might do with AI and some interesting tools that Matt Wolf put forward. If you're at the beginning of your career, if you're in college still, or you're just thinking about careers, there's a couple of tools that are really kind of interesting to do that. I'll just mention them and you can check them out yourself. One of them is called Adaptive Academy, ADAPTIV Academy. And it says, it can answer career-related questions, help you discover the most relevant career paths based on your strengths and interests. So it probably does some assessment. It can teach you some things and let you know what you need to know about a certain career, and maybe that'll pique your interest about pursuing something like that. Another one is called Career Deco, DEKHO, and it says, get clarity on your career with our AI career suggestion engine. Very similar. So that's in addition to, the resume writing and the interview practice. And so I'm just going to mention about interview practice that months ago, I heard about this tool that you could use that's AI driven, where you do a video of an interview, your response to an interview question, and that AI is going to evaluate your performance and give you feedback. And so that's another thing that you can use if you're looking at getting new jobs or applying to new jobs beyond just cover letters and resume.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting tool out there, and might be, for me, seems to be one of the most useful applications of AI. I mean, AI to help you write your resume, AI to help you, write your cover letter and things like that. But the analysis of your responses and how well you do in an interview, because from my experience, that seems to be the key component. So once you've gotten past the filters of looking at your resumes and looking, at your cover letters and things like that, and you actually get some face time with somebody, that interview process seems to be the most important. And do you have other experiences, Andy, in your career, through the hiring process, have you seen that the interview process seems to be the most crucial piece, or is there some other aspect that seems to be more important?
Well, it's certainly essential that you pass muster in a live interview, in my experience. And now that's shifted largely to Zoom and Meet and so on. So initial rounds of interviews are typically conducted online. And so the AI tool evaluating your video performance is really right on target, because that's what you're going to have to, in order to get the in-person interview where they fly you out and sit down with you and really kind of gauge the real sort of energy dynamics that you present when you are in person. All of those things are, the prerequisite is that you pass muster on the video interviews.
I think you're interviewing from some different jobs, Andy. I will also say that at least in the tech world, the first screen is often an AI interview. So using AI to prep for a screen interview, right, like getting that feedback about what AI was picking up on you, is even more valuable.
So you're saying that now in tech jobs, you have to have a video interview with an AI asking you questions? That's how it starts out?
There's just so many applications for all the jobs that are available. So like at a higher level, that may not be true. But in entry-level positions, yeah, that's part of what we were trying to help people prepare for in the course that I taught. I co-taught it. I did not teach the interview portion. But yeah.
How is that AI? How was that AI interview? Like, was it a telephone? Like, I would imagine it wouldn't have been using something like a HeyGen or a DID where you're talking to an avatar.
I actually haven't done one, so I don't know. But there are. It's a good point. I actually don't know if it's an avatar. If somebody is listening, whether live with us or after the fact, go ahead and comment on the show, and let me know if you've done that.
But doesn't that open Oh, sorry.
In the practice thing, I don't think it's an avatar. I think it's like texting back and forth or doing a speech to text so that you can get that, like, I'm practicing saying these words in my mouth. But yeah, it's a good question, Carl.
Yeah, because I was wondering, that opens up any company to any type of we've seen this lawsuits against AI who from a recruitment process because of any type of bias, any type of even unintentional discrimination. Like it could open that up because like how good was that trained and what exactly is your criteria for that, which is kind of interesting. So that's
true. I mean, we hear lots of stories of how AI can be biased, right? Especially on its, how it's trained. So that might be a slippery slope of relying more and more on that initial interview process. What is there any suggestions that we can give to either mitigate or bypass that entirely? Should AI be at a different point of the interview process, or is it like how it is today, or maybe last year, where the AI is actually filtering through resumes, and that has potential issues as well. From the company standpoint, what would be the safest or more ethical route? Any thoughts on that?
First of all, I'm skeptical that there are, other than some very large corporations that have deployed AI to do interviewing. But Beth, you know more about this than I do. Mid-market companies like small, medium businesses, very unlikely that they're doing anything other than
absolutely true.
On the phone or primarily Zoom interviews at this point to try to weed through. So there's a preliminary interviewer who's going to, cull the field, so to speak, down to a number that are going to then be involved in a round of interviews. And so I personally, from the standpoint of somebody who's involved in hiring people for a company, I have yet to see even an advertisement for a tool that will eliminate that interview process for us. But Beth, I'm sure that's happening in very large corporations that have like Google. I'm sure Google is doing something with AI, where they have thousands and thousands of applications for, every cohort.
There are a bunch of tools, and I stumbled onto this because I find it easier to interact in an ideation session or in like I have something that I want to write. I find it easier to have AI interview me, right? So I want like, hey, be my product manager, executive assistant, like and so I was like Googling like, what job profession is that? What job profession interviews, right? Does AI interviews? And there are like 50 new companies that are like, AI can handle your HR tasks, interviews by AI. So they definitely exist. I don't know who's using them.
I've got a friend here in Perth who is a consultant, or I don't know what the right word is, but he is. It's kind of like I don't know what the right word is, but it's software that you basically put your potential staff through. It's kind of like a personality profile, but it's more around, if you're applying for a marketing job or a management job or a sales job, or the questions that it gives you are focused around the key things there. Now, I just quickly opened up the website. I can't see anything obvious that says AI, but I can imagine I've gone through the process of using this software just to get a feel for it. And the big problem I always found with those kind of personality profile tools, if you want to call them that way, is sometimes they ask you questions and you're like, I don't actually know what that means. And being able to have a conversation with an AI that still knows how to ask those questions and maybe can do it in a more relaxed method could potentially, I'm sure somebody's working on it if it's not already out, but could make for an interesting product, used for AI in that kind of space.
Well, Carl, I'm curious because like you can program AI. I mean, you can and you can't, but you can program a system more than you can program humans, right? So I wonder if there's a place where the bias is more correctable because AI is doing it, whether that's happening now or not.
I'm curious to know how they would, if whoever has systems like these would, what the process is, what the screening process is. So like, if it's a very simplistic, have you had experience? You know, a lot of like jobs require you to have experience in a specific tool, a specific situation. So if it's something very simple, like, have you experienced, do you have
Microsoft Word, for example?
Yeah. Do you have like, how many years experience do you have with Salesforce? Right. How many years experience do you have with, like, if that's the AI interview, if it's just simple yes or no, and you're just saying how many years experience do you have managing people? 10. Like, if you just say those things, then there's not really any, like, it really depends on what the interview looks like. But if it's like an in-depth interview, that's very, very different, right? And I doubt any company would say, would ask overtly biased or discriminatory questions, but I have no clue. It's fascinating how on the employer side, because of the amount of applications, AI can help you screen the right candidates, because you're going to get a lot of applications that don't make any sense. And then on the other side, from the applicant side, you're using AI to try to get yourself past that screening process. So it's technically AI versus AI.
Yeah,
right.
Whoever is. But I do, moving to, I think, like, I always thought that your resume kind of opened the door, and then you have to walk through it in the interview, right? That is, to me, the interview is separate from your resume, because this is where all the interpersonal, all those skills come into effect, right? Every single thing you talk to, like the way you present yourself, whatever the job is, I think that's like the next round. And for me, AI is really good, like, especially for I know, for example, my wife who has trouble in interviews, it really is really helpful to have something to, randomly ask you questions and like prepare those kind of answers to help you prep a little bit more, versus the same kind of, tell me your strengths and weaknesses, like the most generic type questions, like something that can actually pull from the job and actually, get you to think and do interview type questions. Super helpful for that.
So,
and I think you can, like, if you're, I remember years ago, I went and applied for a marketing job, and part of the job interview was me, the two guys doing the interview said, we want you to set up a Google ad campaign for us, and we'll give you, I think it was half an hour, and then we'll come and have a look at it. And so I asked a whole pile of questions about, what the ad campaign was, what the target audience, all that kind of stuff. And then I went off and did that. So that kind of stuff is potentially really important in some jobs, but that's the kind of thing you could potentially build into an AI system to quite, what's the word? But it would make it easy to be able to ask questions and show information and react to the way you react or clarify things. I don't know if that sort of stuff is being put out into the market yet, but it seems to me like could speed up the interview process and or speed up, like, reduce the workload involved in having to interview people by testing a lot of that stuff rather than something that's pretty static like we've talked about in the past.
So far we've focused a lot on like before you get the job. Are there more career coach things that happen? Andy talked a little bit about like choosing your career. What about how AI assists people after the interview, after they get the job?
Sort of a mentor, a career coach / mentor AI while you're in position.
That'd be an interesting one.
may exist. I'd be surprised if it doesn't. There's somebody working on that. Let's go find out what that is. There's an AI for that.
If you need support for an idea, just talk to Pi because you're brilliant. It's amazing and insightful, and like, do it.
Right. Motivation right there. I think as a career coach, that your technique, Beth, of interview me or asks me questions and things like that, that will get any chat session up to where it's conversing back and forth, and you are figuring out your own thing, and that's that can give you the motivation or ideas of where to take your career. But I think the most obvious low-hanging fruit is the skills, picking up additional skills, the learning, because AI is an excellent tool for learning how to do new things, right? Teach me like or tell me like I'm 5, or those kinds of things. So if you need to expand, you've identified a area of your career that you don't have particular experience or skill of the skill set to take you to the next step in your career. As long as you can help identify that, then you can use various AI tools to help you learn it, right? And even the online learning platforms like Khan Academy, they're developing they've got their own AI tools to help you with that process. So it's just a step up from what used to be already available, and to just have give you assistance and make it easier from this point. So I think that's the obvious gain that AI can help with your career, is that whole learning and skill set acquiring.
I think when like going off on that learning part, if you have like a career that the trajectory on, like, this is how I get to these levels of position, then you can have AI help guide you with, like you mentioned, the learning path, a learning path to reach this position, to this position, to this position, and constantly being able to know what skills you need, what skills potentially, in combination with something like a character AI, like having a conversation with, like, if you wanted to become a CTO or a CFO, like having a conversation with a CFO and what are the skills to get there, like that could be a path for you, right? If you can't find a mentor who is in that spot, like that can help you plan your career trajectory if you wanted to go that route.
I mean, AI is getting into all parts of the world anyway, so I can easily see it being, if it's not already been done, I can easily see it being developed into those kind of things, like your coach and your career coach or your career mentor, for example, the training tool that you go to when you want to learn something new. I mean, there's just so many opportunities, and because it's still really new, there's probably a heap of stuff that's not out today that will be out in 6 months or a year or 2 years, and it will become the norm at some stage.
What's interesting, so early on, it seemed like there were people who were like your office in a box. Character.ai has some of that. GPT Boss, Mackenzie at GPT Boss built this. And what I find interesting, and there are a couple others, I just can't think of them right now. What I find interesting is that in among your marketing specialist and your HR person and like your different expertise, there are like, they all have like the business coach, like, come talk to me about your ideas kind of stuff. And I think that's actually really interesting. That support.
Let me mention another thing, which is it's always good as your career progresses, your sort of company specific or industry specific learning, ends up kind of bringing you into a focus around certain operational processes or, skill sets that are applied in that sort of idiosyncratic application, that industry, that company. And it's useful, I think, to take advantage of the large language models encompassing understanding of what is out there. I'll give you an example. So for a chief operating officer, in a small company, that's quite different from being a chief operating officer in a global enterprise where you have, a much larger range of requirements. And there's, a framework that is developed and understood in the more advanced or larger organizations. So, but it all resolves down to something that's simple and summarizable, but gives you a framework for thinking about those areas that you would need to, think about. For example, for a chief operating officer, which was my last position, that I had as full-time, you're talking about first marshaling the product market fit for your organization, making sure that the teams that are responsible for that are doing it. There's the channel questions about your distribution and how do you manage that. There's the growth strategy for development of multiple channels and so on, and then there's all the business processes and the technology infrastructure that has to be. So if I asked a question of ChatGPT, like what does a chief operating officer have to think about? I mean, it would give you something more comprehensive than what I just did off the top of my head. So I think that's a very useful thing to kind of refresh your understanding of what the edge cases are, what the full range of the position that you're going to fulfill in next stage of your career, what the full range of skills are. And then, as Junmi was proposing, go out and the ones that you're not so familiar with, go out and start to learn about those. Study those that are not the familiar things.
Right.
A question for you all. A question for you all before I know, Junmi, we're going to go into TLDR. But one thing maybe we want to take a look at is when we initially started this conversation about AI and where it takes your career. Let's look at it from the point of how could this potentially not just change the way we hire people, the way we prepare for interviews, but can this fundamentally change how the entire recruitment process is created and how the entire application or job acquirement is done? Like, can we go beyond, right, the using it in the context of what we are currently doing, but is there anything that goes beyond that? Like, is there any fundamental disruption to how everything, or do we just stay the same, but now we just use AI in that? So more so like a kind of a broader question.
Well, I think that's actually a perfect lead in for the TLDR. So what is the one future change or experience that you would like to see that AI can help change the process for the better? Go.
What I'd love to do first, I'd like to do this because there was another idea that somebody talked to me about, and it had nothing to do with the recruitment, but I was just kind of, it's like in the same vein. It's like, in terms of dating, you're trying to find your match, and there's a lot of back and forth online before you actually meet in real life. Wouldn't it be interesting from a recruitment and job perspective that the AI takes care of everything? Here, it reviews your resume or CV, it reviews the job descriptions and connects you and automatically sets interviews with your top positions. And that way the recruiter and you don't have to go through the song and dance. You just meet. And all that other stuff is taken care of for you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
For me, the one I like is it just occurred to me 5 minutes ago. If you can use AI to learn something, wouldn't it be cool if you could buy a Kindle book on a topic that you wanted to learn about from Amazon, import it into your AI, and it would go through it, learn the information, teach it to you in a fashion that you like, using maybe text initially, but possibly AI video avatars and that kind of stuff, and actually help you learn it like a personal coach. That would be really cool if you could do something like that. I don't know about the legalities of it, but if it could be done, I think it'd be really interesting.
That exists for everything but the Kindle piece.
I mean, I was inspired by this by a friend of mine who posted he just bought this new book on SEO, which I thought was really interesting, and I thought I'd like to buy it. I don't have a week to sit down and read it and go through it, but if we could put it into a system where you could learn it without having to someone to program it, where it could do a lot of the work for you, that'd be a great way to learn stuff. And kind of have a coach in the program, in the topic, as well as the actual information.
So I've talked about Mr. Reindeer before, Ranedeer, and that it like he was a student. He built this for himself to pass classes, and now it exists as a data analysis like prompt that you can go and like copy, right? Or say, I want to continue this prompt. And you can upload a text that you want to have someone teach you, to have a tutor teach you. I think for my TLDR, and we're all falling down on the banner thing. I think AI, in terms of what Carl said, right? Like how is AI going to disrupt this? I think in two ways. No matter what you're applying for, you will need to know how AI can help you do your job. And at the moment, they may not be asking that. Go ahead and say it anyway, because I think it's a like distinguish yourself in the interview. But also, we're skating around. When AI can help you do your job more efficiently, there are fewer jobs, and that's a disruption. Like that's an absolute disruption. So then how do you differentiate yourself in that context? Yeah. Anybody else?
My quickie is learn how to take advantage of the more advanced large language models like ChatGPT-4 and its ability to collect, summarize, and prioritize the areas of interest that you should apply yourself to when it comes to being an A player in the career of your choice.
Nice.
Awesome. And I'm just going to go with Carl. Carl, that idea is fantastic. It's totally in line with everything I want to see. I want active recruitment. I want active matching. The process from being the hiree is exhausting. So I would love AI to handle the back end. It's like, here's all my information. I'll even do like some Loom videos and do some pre-interview questions and those kinds of things, so that the AI can go, okay, this is this person's personality, match them with the company that has those like minds, and go for it. I want to honestly, if I was gonna be looking for a job, I want them to find me.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you could take a little off my shoulders, that would be fantastic. And if you could take a little off of the recruiter's shoulders, that would be fantastic. Awesome, so yes, I'm in Carl's camp 100%. Let's go.
Yep. And we should say Brian was not here today, so LinkedIn was not discussed, but LinkedIn is like a giant point of this. And yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Come back tomorrow. Brian will be back. We hope Robert will be here, and have a good day.
All right. Aloha.
Bye.